Let me tell you about how discovering Kirby in my 30s has been a wonderful and magical experience. But first, Mortal Kombat. Isn't it cool? The characters, the stages, the blood, the brutalities, the fatalities. As a lifelong fan of the series, getting MK1 on day, 1 was a no-brainer. Despite all the technical issues and lack of content that still affected, I was hooked on the gameplay, and within the first month I had already put a healthy amount of hours into it. By the time I had reached Grandmaster level, I had already hit a cap on my abilities, and was getting frustrated getting my ass handed over and over to the point where it was not fun anymore. I needed a breath of fresh air, to put my time into something that was the complete opposite. Enter the trusty NES app on NSO. I came upon Kirby's Adventure and realized that not only was a game like that a complete 180 from Mortal Kombat, but also that I've never actually played any Kirby game before. Not a real one anyway. Before now, my only experience with the little pink puffball was Kirby's Epic Yarn, which I beat and loved all the way back on the Wii days. And that's not really considered a mainline Kirby game anyway. Hell, I never even really liked playing as him on any of the Smash Bros games either. I guess I was always put off by the general kiddie vibe. Don't get me wrong, I loved and still love kid-friendly games like Mario or Spyro. But even as a 5-year-old, 100 times out of 100, I would have rather played stuff like Fighting Force, FIFA, or whatever Dragon Ball game I could get my hands on, rather than Kirby. It always seemed a little too babyish, I guess? And due to the pink color palette, yes, girly. But this series is beloved by many content creators and general audiences, sometimes to a freakish degree if you ask me. It was created by Masahiro Sakurai, a living legend of game development, and throughout the years has seen many high-rated releases. It was time I fixed this gap on my gaming resume. But if I was going to do it, I would do it right. I would start with the very first game on the series. So, I hopped into the Gameboy NSO app and started the first of 6 Kirby games I would tackle one after the other. That game was, of course... And man, I wasn't wrong. Look, this might piss off some of the people who would bother to make it this far, but these are kiddie games for little babies. There's no other way around it. They might even be the kiddiest kiddie games I've ever played. Which is why it's so surprising that it's just so damn fun. And that's even taking into account that Dreamland is probably the lesser of all the games I played. Being the first one, it borrows heavily from other side-scrollers from the era. At this point, copy abilities had not been introduced, so what we're left with is a simple platformer that never strays far from the course. Kirby picks up abilities that work similarly to Mario's hat in Super Mario Bros. 3, as he makes his way to the end of each of the 5 very short levels to fight an undemanding boss. The platforming itself doesn't achieve the fluidity of even the worst Mario games of the time, and there's not much more in terms of level variety, the final level being a boss rush mode that reuses the previous 4 boss battles with no changes. And yet, despite, or maybe because, it's such a breeze to play, and it being over very quickly, the entire adventure can be completed in less than your average streaming show episode. It never lost my attention or bored me. The aesthetic elements and enemy types that would make the rest of the games pop are already present here, alas, in a less fleshed out state, but as a palate cleanser, especially from the bloatiness of modern gaming, it worked wonders. Sure, it might be more of a proof of concept for future games than a fully fleshed out experience, and it's not necessary to appreciate what the next entries do, but it was a fun appetizer for better things to come. I'm going to cut right to the chase. Kirby's Adventure is one of the best games I've ever played, and I'm a little afraid that this is where the series peaked. From the charming opening tutorial on how to draw Kirby to the final frame of the end credits, this is a damn masterpiece. All hyperbolism aside, Kirby's Adventure takes the foundations laid by the previous game and expands them with a splash of creativity rarely seen in a sequel, on any medium. It's like the Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn to Dreamland's The Evil Dead. What caught my attention from the get-go was how much of an undeniable technical powerhouse this is, which is nothing short of impressive considering the platform it was released on. The animations are fluid and expressive, The level design is varied, beautiful and colorful. Some of the levels even feature background effects similar to what the SNES would pull off with the Mode 7 graphics. And it's fully fleshed and featured, with Kirby having an abundance of abilities that he now gets from swallowing enemies. Yes, this is where his iconic copy abilities are finally introduced. And the sense of discovery that grabbing an enemy and seeing how useful or not its abilities are adds a layer of variety, not to mention strategy, that is completely absent from the first game. Certain abilities do better in some circumstances, so finding them and keeping a hold of them as they go away with one hit is something that always kept me engaged, despite it not being much harder than Dreamland. And trying each new one kept things fresh and fun at all times, also providing some variety were the museum and the bonus minigames, which, being honest, I didn't engage too much with. But every time I got into one, it provided a fun little distraction, and they're good enough that some came back as their own game modes in future games. The great pacing kept me moving from one level to the next, constantly feeding that sense of discovery that is not all that common in 2D platformers. But it's sadly over much too soon. It's a short but generally sweet experience. I haven't even touched on the music, which is about one of the best soundtracks I've heard on a game. Time has been very kind to this one. I realized by the time it was released, more innovative games were already out, but I just can't help but be impressed with Kirby's adventure. It blew my expectations on what was possible on an 8-bit console. In a lot of ways, it's the real first Kirby game. It comes out fully formed, and most of its elements in both visual and gameplay carry through the rest of the series. It's something that I can see myself easily coming back to over the years, just like the next one. Unfortunately, at the time of writing this, Kirby's Pinball Land is not available on NSO, so my chronological dive into the series had to be almost immediately broken. Skipping that one and jumping straight into Kirby's Dream Course, the first spin-off and the first Kirby game on the SNES I would play. Dream Course is essentially a mini-golf game, played in an isometric, semi-3D style, where Kirby is perpetually in ball form, and the point, as usual in a golf game, is to set the power, angle, and spin to get him into the goal hole in as few shots as possible. Each of the 8 courses has 8 different holes that present the player with a nice variety of challenges, whether it's the classic sand and water traps, to conveyor belts, tornadoes, platforms, and enemies. It's all deceptively simple, but there's an added layer of depth in that Kirby's copy abilities make a surprising appearance. See, enemies are all over the levels, and part of the process of revealing the final goal is to destroy them using a variety of special skills spread on the map. Using these skills is as necessary to master the challenging courses as perfecting the right angle to bounce off walls or getting the perfect jump over a platform. Easier said than done. There's quite a bit of trial and error involved, and I'm not gonna lie, I abused the rewind feature to avoid losing some precious hit points and lives, because losing enough lives means game over and having to restart the course from scratch. It is an engaging mechanic that makes every shot surprisingly tense and high stakes, and keeps the game fresh and exciting. Like in Adventure, what also helps is the variety in course design and enemy types. I ended up taking my sweet time trying out new strategies to tackle each course, and quickly became addicted to its intuitiveness and colorful charm. I have even come back to it from time to time to try and beat my high scores, even without using the rewind feature. It is a pretty complete and fun game that was an unexpected surprise and I ended up loving. Perhaps the only negative thing during my playthrough was the final boss, which I found annoying as it required more finesse in timing than developing a proper strategy. But that is such a small part of the overall package that it doesn't really matter. It's the one game in this video I spent the most time with, but eventually it was time to move on to the following. A bit of a spoiler alert. From this point on, it's all downhill. That's not to say Kirby's Dream Land 2 is a bad game. It's not at all. But I never got back that sense of wonder and addictiveness I got with Adventure and Dream Course. Dreamland 2 very much follows the recipe of the Gameboy original, with a dash of adventures enhancements sprinkled on top. The added ingredient this time is the addition of 3 animal partners that serve basically as personalized armed vehicles for the pink puffball. They have their own life bars, so they also work as default health extensions. They all can be used across every part of the levels, but of course, each has their advantage depending on where they're used. The fish works much better in water levels, of course, than in ones that focus on vertical traversal, for which the owl is better. The copy abilities are also back, which combined with the animal friends can make for some fun moments and different strategies. And yet, it all felt very been there, done that. The gameplay in traversal works essentially the same, and the strategies that work on adventure can be applied here and make everything a breeze. And there are fewer copy abilities than before and no new ones, which removes the sense of discovery and excitement. Bosses repeat too much and the levels mix with each other. Not one of them is really memorable. Ultimately, it's decently fun, but it doesn't have any staying power. I never found the same drive to push forward that I did with Adventure. And despite the introduction of the animal companions, it doesn't do enough to set itself apart from the rest, aesthetically or gameplay-wise. Though luckily, it never overstays its welcome. This 5-level quest can be finished almost faster than the entirety of the first game.
Kirby's Avalanche.
Kirby's Avalanche pulled double duty not only as one of my first Kirby games, but also as the first Puyo Puyo game I've ever played. And it was really nice to discover that I really enjoy puzzle games. And the Puyo Puyo formula of stacking 4 of the same color blobs to make them disappear and fill the other player's screen with rocks is exceptionally fun. Less nice was the discovery that I'm really bad at it. And man, I tried. Once and again. But after the first couple of levels I was really struggling, and eventually became overwhelmed by the speed at which the computer opponent was making quick work of their stack of blocks, and I didn't make it too far into the otherwise fun story mode, which has cute little cutscenes before and after each round. There's not much more to say about this. It's great and I wish I were better at it. I'll come back to it here and there for a few rounds, but I probably will never become a Puyo Puyo master. As a quick side note, I also tried Dr. Robotnik's Mean Beam Machine on the Genesis NSO app. And it's essentially the same game with a Sonic themed skin on top. Same story here, didn't make it past the first few levels but had a reasonable amount of fun. Though I must say that for me, the Kirby aesthetic fits the game much better than Sonic's. Now we move on to the final game of my playthrough. Or should I say final games? Kirby Superstar is the first proper game in the main series to appear on the SNES, and thus, my first experience with a 16-bit Kirby platformer. It is essentially a collection of 6 mini-campaigns, using the same mechanics as Kirby's Adventure with a few enhancements in gameplay. All game modes start with a brief guide on how to play and the objective of the game, delivered in typically cute Kirby fashion. I didn't give much thought in which order I would tackle these, so I started immediately with Dynablade, possibly the shorter of the main campaigns. Upon jumping in, I realized just how much the change to 16-bit made the Kirby style pop. Everything shines with a life that I hadn't seen before, and the animations like Kirby putting on a pair of goggles when jumping into water are truly beautiful. Not only that, but the soundtrack has the chance to excel. The changing hardware breathes new life into the music tracks, both old and new. The game itself plays very similar to the rest. The biggest addition being that Kirby can now grab enemies and turn them into CPU-controlled allies that help you throughout the level. The extra abilities they provide, combined with the old copy abilities, come in handy when tackling some of the more challenging parts of the levels. Which, yes, this is a game that actually challenges you for a change. Not that it's too hard, but compared to the previous games, it might as well be Hollow Knight. As with the others, this game mode is a self-contained story that is over fairly quickly, but provides a satisfactory final boss battle, which up to this point has been sorely lacking. Spring Breeze came next, and this one was much too familiar, as it is an abridged remake of Dreamland with the new mechanics of Superstar. It's super short and easy to get through as the difficulty from the original Dreamland hasn't been modified. But by this point I was having a bit of a Kirby overload, and I would have preferred to play something more original for one of the game modes. I didn't necessarily get that with the next mode I played, Meta Knight's Revenge, but I was still incredibly satisfied. This is effectively a harder difficulty mode, as there is a clear spike in difficulty from the rest, and even though it starts with yet another fight against Wispy Woods, and Jesus Christ, by this point I'm really done repeating this boss fight, it has shown up on every mainline game multiple times with little to no variation. It does eventually reveal a much more exciting adventure. with hilarious characters and dialogue popping up at various points, and an epic scope as Kirby traverses Meta Knight's gigantic ship. And it's somehow even more visually impressive than the rest of the game modes, with things flying in and from the background, beautiful sunsets, and a wide variety of character designs and animations. All of which builds up to a satisfying finale, in what amounts to my favorite game mode of the bunch. I kind of wish this was expanded upon and made the bulk of the game. From my favorite of the game modes to my least favorite, the Great Cave Offensive. An almost Metroidvania mode where the goal is to make your way through labyrinthine levels to find different types of treasures. And if I wasn't Kirby'd out before, the track of getting lost and going back and forth to try to find an exit from each level, or the hidden treasures, pushed me over the edge. I'm sure a lot of people out there hold this one with great regard, but I couldn't find the fun in it. Sadly, it was necessary to finish it to reveal the final campaign. Milky Way Wishes is the longest of the game modes, and I suppose we can consider it the most important one. And I must say, for being the big thing the game pushes you forward to unlock, it's disappointingly simple and familiar. It dishes the ability to copy different enemies' abilities whenever you like, in favor of using one main copy ability throughout the whole thing. It's a disappointing return to the style of the first game, yet again, and rehashes the same bosses I've fought a dozen times by this point. There are, thankfully, a couple of shooting levels that breathe a little life into it, if only for a brief period. And they're refreshingly fun as they emphasize not crashing over simplistic shooting. One interesting thing to realize was how many of the gameplay and aesthetic elements of the Smash Bros. Series had their origin in this game mode. A lot of the elements from the single-player modes in different Smash Bros. Games can trace their origin back to this one. But other than that, I was disappointed that this collection ended with a thump rather than a bang. A few other game modes round up the game. Megaton Punch and Samurai Kirby are simple timing minigames that come back from previous games. The Arena is essentially a boss rush mode that I didn't really bother to play. And Gourmet Race is a racing mode where the goal is not only to get to the finish line first, but eat more of the food spread throughout the course than King Dedede. They are fun for what they are, but as far as I'm concerned, it's nothing worth going back to. Even though I'm ending on a slightly negative note, which is probably because I've had enough Kirby for about a year now, Superstar is an incredible collection, and as a package, a great deal. I can't imagine a better purchase for kids in the 90s. Buying this game probably guaranteed months of entertainment, especially if they were to 100% each of the game modes. I just wish that I had played it another time instead of at the tail end of a Kirby marathon, but I can appreciate how great and well put together it is. I'll end this video with a brief ranking of the games I've played so far, starting at the bottom with number 6, which is Kirby's Dream Land. This is last not because it's a bad game, but because all the others took the base this one laid down and did bigger and better things. At number 5, I'll put Kirby's Avalanche. I loved what I played of it, but I wish I could play more, and this is admittedly 100% my fault. Coming up at 4, I'll go with Dreamland 2. Solid experience without adding much new to the table. At 3, I'll go with Superstar. An excellent package that feels a little bloated and doesn't always play to its strengths. 2 is Dream Course. I adored this game, and like I said, it's probably the one I'll come back to more often. The easy number 1 is Kirby's Adventure, which is a top 5 2D platformer for me, and one of the best games I've played in recent times. I'm honestly really glad that I finally gave Kirby a chance, and had the opportunity to experience its origins and some of its better titles in a relatively short span. And while I need a little break from the series, I'm excited to play what comes next. Let me know which one is your favorite, and which ones you think I should steer clear of. Thanks for watching the video. Please like, subscribe, share. If you do only one thing, please share. Thank you for making it this far if you did. I know I have a lot of things to improve on, and I hope to keep doing it video by video. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.